Kevin Craig for U.S. Congress, 7th District in Missouri. You're running again this year. And you've been running ever since 2002, every 2 years, pretty much, except for a few exceptions. But you are running for the Libertarian Party. Exciting. I'm excited for you, buddy. What's your main message for everybody out there, the Missouri voters who only vote Republican?
Well, first of all, I want to just make it clear that Vine and Fig Tree is a nonprofit tax exempt organization which does not endorse candidates. So I'm sort of here wearing two hats. I'm wearing the hat of a Vine and Fig Tree guy, but also now I just filed my papers to become a candidate, which I enjoy doing because I enjoy promoting the Vine and Fig Tree vision. That's sort of why I'm in the race, is to promote the Vine and Fig Tree idea. I certainly have no illusions about ever winning an election. That's absolutely impossible and unrealistic. But I like getting in front of audiences where they're gathered to hear a candidate's debate or a forum or an interview on the radio. And I always promote Vine and Fig Tree. My campaign theme is liberty under God. And what I mean by liberty is if you want to become a paid member of the Libertarian Party, you have to take a pledge that says, I do not believe in or advocate the initiation of force as a solution to any personal or political social problem.
Is that still
So,
true
well,
about the Libertarian
some
Party?
states I think have eliminated the requirement to sign the pledge, but I don't know. You sound like you're asking because you know that it's not a fact, but
I don't know.
it,
I don't know.
it
I
has
just
always been
okay.
it has always been a fact. I've always loved that pledge,
Yeah.
and it might be the case that if you go online at lp.org and say I want to become a member, you might see that pledge is still on the website. I don't know. I haven't checked recently, but that that's still, even if they don't like the idea of forcing people to make a pledge, okay, I get that. But it's still the central part of the libertarian message. I do not believe in the initiation of force as a way to solve problems.
You think that message would be like more clearer and people would want to cling on to that more than they ever have after they've seen all the authoritarianism and fascism that Trump has been, crony capitalism that Trump has been bringing into our country, socialism is at an all-time high, fascism. You think the non-aggression principle would really be a good thing to hear now?
Well, you would think that because it sounds good, sort of like liberty under God sounds like a good thing. But when you think about it, a lot of people conclude, no, that's not what I want. I don't want liberty under God. Ben Franklin, I think it was, maybe it was Jefferson, who said, if you want to trade your liberty for security, then you don't deserve either one and you won't get either one. So when I say liberty under God, people say, well, no, I don't want liberty. I want security. I want the government to protect me. I want the government to feed me. I want the government from cradle to grave to be my security. And when I say liberty under God, they say, oh, no, I believe in the separation of church and state. I want a secular country. I want a government that pretends that God does not exist and they're not accountable for anything. I mean, they don't say it that way, but that's the way people feel. They don't want God. They don't want to be reminded about God. So liberty under God sounds like a Hallmark card, sounds like a patriotic slogan. It's very offensive. And
Yeah,
actually,
go ahead. Keep
I
going,
just can
sorry.
say, actually, I make it a point to point out that it really is offensive to people and that we can't just engage in political and patriotic slogans. I
Right.
mean, this year, 2026, is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. It's total hypocrisy because number one, the United States government, Washington, D.C., says that your local public school teachers cannot teach students that the Declaration of Independence is actually true. When it says the existence of God is a self evident truth, we are created equal, we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. You can't teach creatorism in a public school. The idea that God has communicated to us the laws of nature and of nature's God, which the great legal scholar William Blackstone said can only be found in the Bible. And you can't say that someday we're going to be held accountable to how well we obey God's laws in the Bible when we come face to face with the supreme judge of the world. And that if we're a Christian nation, which that's what they said, this was a Christian nation, then we can have a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. You cannot teach students in a public school that all those things are true. And so I don't know. That's very controversial. And I think it's pretty hypocritical for us to celebrate a document that you can't teach as true in public schools. Also, the document says we have a right. No, it says we have a duty, not just a right, a duty to abolish any government that becomes a tyranny. And America's founding fathers abolished their government because they said it had become a tyranny. But our government is at least 20, 30, 100 times. I mean, I don't even know how you can measure how much more tyrannical our government is than their government. They abolished it. They said, this has to go. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
We just tolerate tyranny. We tolerate tyranny because actually we want tyrants to run our lives.
And it's a false illusion. I think the idea it's all run by fear that we need someone to protect ourselves, and it's all a false illusion of safety and security, when in fact that's not what government brings at all. And the Bible, it doesn't, it paints that picture for us that when a people are disobedient, he actually brings in a nation, he brings in a government, he brings in an empire, he brings in the sword, a government to terrorize the people. And so if we want to be without terror or without fear, we need to we need to be obedient to God first and reject this idea of government altogether.
Right. Well, that's a hard message for people to hear.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, it seems like obvious to me, but I've been thinking about and reading about this idea of the vine and fig tree, everybody peacefully living under their own vine and fig tree, the
Right.
idea that if we're obedient, God will not send the sword through our land, we will be protected. I do believe that the biggest obstacle to world peace, as described by the Bible and Micah's vision, is this whole thing called government, which is institutionalized vengeance, institutionalized aggression, and violence. And I, I, I had a few years ago, I posted a letter which said, in effect, it was a letter from American Christians to the Muslim world. And the letter said, it's hypothetical, but it was written on the day before 9/11. And American Christians said, God has told us, again, hypothetical, but God revealed to us that you guys are going to attack us tomorrow on 9/11. And God has revealed to us that the government is going to respond to that by a war on terror. And this war is going to cost $8 trillion, which the political scientists at Brown University have calculated that the war on terror, the cost was $8 trillion in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere. $8
Wow.
trillion. If we took that money and just said, well, do we want to spend that on bombs blowing up people and blowing up homes and hospitals and grocery stores around the world? Well, why not? Let's just give it to the Muslims. Let's just give it to the poorest Muslims in the world. There are like 400 million Muslims in the world right now who live on $2 a day or less. And 90% of all Muslims in the world live below the poverty line in the US. And even most of them live under the poverty level of their own countries, which is like ridiculously impoverished compared to America.
Yeah.
Let's just give them the money. Would they hate us if we just gave them the money with a note that said, your Islamic caliphate has never given you a check? It would be about $3,000 for every man, woman, and child in the Muslim world. That's
Wow.
which would be an astonishing gift. It would double, triple, and in the cases of those who are below the absolute poverty level, increase their annual income by 10,000. I mean, 10 times. It's just crazy.
They
What a
would think a
thought.
little they would think a little differently of Americans after getting something like that in the mail, I would
I
think.
would think so. And also let's give them the gospel. Let's show them how to make their nation a Christian nation so that they can be a gift and a grace to other people.
Yeah.
Why not do that? So, and I got some pushback on that. And the idea is that we just can't trust those guys. They all hate us. They all want to destroy us. But actually, it's only a very small minority of Muslims who hate us.
Yeah.
Most, I mean, like 90%. They did a poll, which if you take a typical political poll, they ask 1,000 people, and they say, that's a really good poll when you survey 1,000 people. Well, this poll was a poll of 36,000 Muslims in I forget how many dozens of countries, dozens of nations, And 80 or 90% of them said, no, we think it's wrong to bomb the innocent. We think it's wrong to kill innocent people. We don't approve of the jihadis. We think Americans are great. And, so that they have a generally positive attitude. But we're not taking advantage of that. We're just going around blowing things up, and it's insane. And I know there's a visceral reaction to what I'm saying when I say that by people who believe we have to exercise our Second Amendment rights, but they don't. I mean, even though our government is tyrannical, they don't, and they can't. As Joe Biden said, you can't do anything against us because we have F-15s. That's what Biden said, and it's true. We couldn't overthrow the government if we wanted to right now. But also, we think we need to bomb all these people. And I noticed there was a poll recently that said a large percentage of the Jews in Israel also believe they just need to carpet bomb Palestine, just bomb them all. They
Yeah.
they really believe that, and Americans believe the same thing, and that's hideously unchristian, in my opinion.
Yeah. I had
And I just think,
someone recently was saying online that, hey, this is becoming Islam is becoming a real problem in the United States. And what are we going to do about it? And I'm thinking, well, like, why are you bringing that up? Like, what are you saying? Are you saying that we need to get our guns out, or are we gonna like somehow get the state involved to try to? I mean, what would his whole he had a presupposition that like the government needs to get involved and do something about this problem, and what else can we do but like love these people and hopefully bring them to Christ, right? I mean, like, what else? What are you planning on doing? Like, getting your gun out and threatening Muslim people, or start, threatening them, or like getting angry or something? Well, like, I just don't understand what your strategy would be besides. Don't we need to win these people over somehow? How else are you going to do it? You're going to keep I'm surprised more people, Kevin, more Muslims don't hate us for the last 50, 60 years of just, bombing these people in other countries. I would hate the US if I were them, probably.
well, I don't think we're taking advantage of a generally favorable attitude that once existed. I think we're making things worse, and the government is leading us into war, leading us into a terrible situation.
Yeah.
And suppose now we had go. Let's go back to 1978, which is before the Iranian Revolution, and the revolution is cooking up because the United States installed a violent dictator, an oppressive dictator, the Shah. And what if we said, look, if you guys in the government think that we have, and at that point we're talking about $40 trillion. That's how much money the United States has spent on national defense or national security, $40 trillion since 1978. What if we just gave all that money to Iran? Would we have the problem we have today? What if we had a $40 trillion budget for executing the Great Commission? I mean, the Great Commission, that's what we're supposed to be doing, winning hearts and minds and making disciples of all the nations. Trillions of dollars have been spent on bombing things rather than on missionaries and evangelizing and helping people. I don't know. It just staggers my thinking to think that we've just wasted so much money. Totally.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
agrees that all the wars we've been involved in my lifetime have been a complete failure, a complete waste of
Right,
time.
right. And
Vietnam,
you're not saying you actually believe, or like you would actually, if we had that money to actually do that, actually like steal from American people, the government taking their money and
no,
giving
I'm
it
not
to
saying
other
the government
people.
should do that.
Right.
I'm
Someone
just
might
saying that
misconstrue you. You're just saying,
yeah, no,
if
no.
just a thought experiment, hypothetically, instead of using all of this money that we had used to blow people up and had used it for trying to win them to like a favorable view of the US, to win them to Christ ultimately, it would be much more persuasive in the long run than killing their cousin.
I think bribery is a better evangelistic process than blowing up their home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Um,
anyway,
Yeah, no, great points, Kevin. Man, you speak on so many topics, and at kevincraig.us, people can go to your website and, dude, you just have it. You have like what, four sections: God, the economy, liberty under God. You have like four different sections, and then you have like 30, 40 links on each one, just telling all of your positions. And I've gone through those websites, man, and they're awesome. It's fun to go through those and say, what's like it seems like you're trying to analyze what's the biblical view. What is our biblical view? What should the biblical view be towards all of these issues? And again, you're like an anti-candidate, and you're like trying to abolish the thing. You're running to abolish the very office you're running for, which is like unheard of. But I love it, dude.
Yeah, that my homepage hasn't really been altered much since I first put it up,
Okay.
and I'm going to try to get that definitely try to get that upgraded. I put that web page together. I first started running in 2002, and I was using a web page design software called Front Page 98, as in 1998. And I'm still using that program, and my websites are still not mobile friendly. They're still ugly, but the content is good.
Yeah.
And there's more. I haven't updated that page a lot because there's a whole lot more pages on the overall site, which they're what the thing to do is, if you have a concern or a question about a given issue, the way to do it is to go to Google and type in your issue, like inflation. Let's say that's your issue, inflation. And then you type the words cite, SITE, colon, kevincraig.us. So cite, colon, kevincraig.us, plus whatever issue you're interested in: war, violence, education, energy, whatever. And then Google will return all the web pages on my site that deal with that issue. And all my pages are designed to say, what does the Bible say? If we took the Bible as a blueprint, what does it say we should do to solve these problems? And I think it's pretty persuasive case. By the way, Google blueprint site colon kevincraig.us, and there's a page on why we should consider the Bible as a blueprint for political action and solving our problems. Textbook site colon kevincraig.us will show you the pages where I say we should treat the Bible as a textbook in every field of human inquiry: geology, math, everything, not just religion in some abstract sense. So the Bible is the fundamental textbook for human knowledge.
Kevin, when you say like America should be a theocracy, and most people's minds, they're still thinking government, sword, coerce, compel, forcing people to become Christians or something like that. But your paradigm for theocracy, which you say is a true biblical blueprint for what the Bible actually teaches about theocracy, is one without the state itself, without the sword. Can you just
Yeah,
elaborate on the idea of theocracy and what's the true understanding of what we should think of when we think of that term?
our schools and our media and our government all want us to think of Handmaid's Tale when we think of that word theocracy. The word literally comes from two Greek words meaning God governs. Now, Ben Franklin famously said in the Constitutional Convention, God governs. And that's why he said we should start each day of the Constitutional Convention in prayer so that God would give us wisdom to come up with what we should be doing. So God governs. America, the Constitution was ratified by 13 Christian theocracies. Now, a truly Christian theocracy is very different from a Muslim theocracy or a Jewish theocracy. And I would say the main reason is because Jesus said all the other theocracies, he said the kings of the Gentiles and all those nations, they were theocracies. They believed the king was God or the king was under some kind of a god. But all the nations of the ancient world were theocracies of some false god. And Jesus said all those other theocracies, they're bad. The reason they're bad is because they have a human, a creature as their theocratic God rather than the creator, the true creator. And in a true theocracy, a Christian theocracy, our creator is our ruler. And all the other theocracies had a creature for their ruler, a human for their ruler. And Jesus said all these kings, they love to be archists. That's the Greek word from which we get our word anarchist. And he told his disciples, you guys, you Christians are not to be archists. You're not to rule over people like the kings of the Gentiles do. Well, if you're not supposed to be an anarchist, that makes you an anarchist, technically. But of course, we've been trained to believe that anarchists are bomb-throwing assassins who don't believe in private property and they believe in chaos and such like that. Again, we've got anarchy and chaos, anarchy and theocracy both completely wrong in how we think about those two words.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the biblical position. The biblical position is that we obey God. We don't steal, we don't kill, we don't covet, we don't lie. We obey God's commandments. He is our God, and that's theocracy. When we're obeying God's commandments, we're not ruling over other people. We don't steal from other people. We don't tax other people. We don't imprison other people. We don't do those things because we're not archists like the kings of the Gentiles. That's Mark chapter 10, by the way. So it's everything's flipped on its head. Everything's flipped on its head.
Kevin, going back to people being disobedient, like our country being disobedient, just and then God sending, I'm going to send basically an archist. I'm going to send, an empire against you, a tyranny, basically sending them the sword, basically big government. So does it start like it seems like they're both problems, but it's a result of being a nation being disobedient, a country being disobedient. So it's like, do we fix both problems? Is it which one should we focus our attention
What are the
on?
two problems? State the two problems again.
Being disobedient,
Okay.
and then the other problem is like having government or trusting in government,
Okay.
having a
Right.
form of
Right.
government. And you're saying that government's the biggest like instigator of evil in the world, but it's also just us being disobedient as well. You're saying. So I guess how do
Well,
those things like mesh? Because like if we weren't being disobedient, we wouldn't have the empire over us to begin with, right?
right. There's a providential way of looking at it to say that if we were obedient, God would not send a sword. God would not put governors over us.
Right.
That's true. But there's also a sense to flip it around. It's like two sides of a coin. We want government. I mean, when I say we, I mean Americans who don't believe in, liberty under God, vine and fig tree, anarcho theocracy, whatever you want to say. My position is the biblical position. I think, I hope they want government. They want government to beat up on other people. They want government to steal from people and give it to them. They think they get a better life from government without realizing that any analysis of history shows that the bigger the government is, the lower our standard of living, and especially the lower our standard of living could be. Now, there's obviously a sense in which we have capitalists producing a lot of stuff. We have phones, cell phones, and we have computers and air conditioners, and we didn't have those, 80 years ago. And that's true. And you can say that our life is better today because we have cell phones and computers. And that parallels the rise in the size and scope and intrusiveness of government. So you can say that disproves my theory. But what I would say is cell phones, a lot of people are arguing that that doesn't really make us better human beings. I think that's the way we have to look at it. A lot of this stuff that we say, look, we have all these things, we have this material inventions and things, but do they really make us better human beings? That's, I think, the question. And I would say that's a questionable thing. But what I'm trying to get at is if we hadn't spent $40 trillion since 1978 blowing things up, we would have a vastly better lifestyle than we have now. I mean, think about all the wealth that's just been frittered away by government and not put into really productive things, not solving human problems, not elevating our morality. There's a whole bunch of things we could have been doing with all the money that's been wasted by government.
Yeah.
But we'll never get there because people want government. They fear anarchy more than they fear, let me put it this way, they fear statelessness more than they fear tyranny. Tyranny gives them comfort, and tyrants, they run the schools. They make us think that they're making our lives better. But we've all been deceived. We're all victims of educational malpractice to believe that government makes our lives better when it actually makes our lives worse.
So that's part of our sin. Part of our sin is this kind of idolatry and of faithlessness and wanting to be ruled, and kind of the mistake that the Israelites made in wanting a king. They wanted to be like all the other nations. They wanted someone to protect them, and a warlike king who can protect them instead of having God was already ruling and reigning as their king, and it was a rejection of God as their king, as God clearly said in 1 Samuel 8. So it is part of their sin.
Yeah, I think one of the big sins, I mean, One of the big sins is we want government. God is not going to remove tyranny when we still want it. We want tyrants more than we want to be governed by God. And
Yeah.
we think that tyrants give us a better standard of living because tyrants are willing to steal from other people and give it to us.
Yeah.
And as long as we want someone to steal for us, we're going to get tyrannical thieves.
I like how you mentioned providence because providence, that's such a great word. And trusting in God, trusting that God's going to work things out is trusting in providence. Like if you don't have this view of providence, then you become fearful. If God's not in control and doing all things, even the little things in our lives, even maybe bad things that come into our lives, and seeing it through the lens of scripture and saying, look, providentially, God brought this into my life. So now what am I going to do about it? How do I respond biblically? But instead of kind of asking that question, we anxious and afraid, and we say, I need the government to come and protect me, and I want them to come and do this for me or get this bad guy for me. And it's the wrong approach. It's not the biblical approach.
Right. But you see, it's not like there's one thing that we can do. You can't do, you can't solve our problems with just one tool. The Bible is like a Swiss Army knife. It has all the tools we need to solve all of our different problems. And it really requires a complete reformation or revolution of our lives. It takes a whole change of lives across the whole range of our lives, a whole range of our society. The Bible covers every area of life, and every area of life has to be brought under the jurisdiction of God. And that's a big deal. That's a big task. It was easier, I would say, back in 1776 because the schools taught everybody the Bible. That was the purpose. That was the reason public schools were created, was to make sure everybody could read the Bible and understand the Bible, because it was from the Bible that we got the laws of our nation, of our government. And also it helped us deal with other people in a Christian way. We don't lash out at people. We don't try to hurt people. We don't try to cheat people. We don't shoplift. It was easier to see how to make a Christian nation better because we were already a Christian nation. But now the government denies that we are a Christian nation. The Supreme Court says we don't care about our Christian path, our Christian past. We're now an atheistic nation. They don't say atheistic, they say secular, but we are now an atheistic nation. We do not, the Supreme Court in 1892 said, proudly boasted, we are a Christian nation. And the Supreme Court of today says, no, that's not true. We're not anymore. Even if, and they wouldn't even grant it, I don't think that it was, but they would say, we certainly aren't anymore. So we're just talking about night and day here. Compared to what it was 300 years ago to today, night and day.
Yeah.
And it's like, how would we change Iran? If we were the benevolent dictators, Americans think they're really smart and better than all the other countries. How would we change Iran? How would we change China? How would we change Russia? All of our enemies, North Korea. How would we change them? What would we do? Well, unfortunately, I think we're doing to ourselves what we accuse the other nations of doing to their people. Our government is just as tyrannical. Our government is just as anti-Christian as all these other governments that Americans complain about.
Yeah.
So we don't have an idea what we're
Sometimes
talking
I think we fear other governments, and we don't see the very tyranny right before our eyes. Like in other words, it doesn't make much of a difference who's the one taxing you, whether it's China or whether it's, your own administration. It's still all tyranny. It's still like when God talks about in Deuteronomy 28 and then Leviticus about like the curses and you being the people being disobedient and him sending like a foreign people or a nation, does it really make a difference where the tyranny comes from, which empire it is? I mean, it seems like a judgment just the same to have your own government be the one terrorizing you, whether it's them or China or whoever. It's still the same judgment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still the same judgment. And it's also we tend to blame leaders. I mean, we do, but we also blame the people. I mean, even if we say country X is a tyranny and the leader is a tyrant, and like Trump wants to assassinate the Ayatollah, we want to assassinate these leaders because they're dictators and they're tyrants. Well, we also tend to impute evil to the people. And the people, they don't necessarily like their government, their dictator, any more than we do. But what do? We bomb the people. We put sanctions on the people of that country. And it's hoped that if we create enough pain and suffering in the people of those bad countries, that they will rise up and overthrow their tyrannical government. And that's crazy
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's a violation of Romans 13 for them to rise up and assassinate their leader. But why are we putting all the people who are cursed by a tyrant, inflicting pain and misery on them by denying them, by putting sanctions on them so that people can't sell them things like food and medical care and how to rebuild their infrastructure and all these things? We deprive the people. We hate the people. We inflict evil on the people of those countries. Oh, it's just such a mess.
That's a real reality too. That's just objectively true. To try to deny that is missing the mark because you really are hurting those people directly, especially sanctions, economic sanctions hurt the middle class. It hurts the very people who are walking around going from marketplace back to home to their homes and going to schools. Like it hurts the people. And so, yeah, I just think that you have to be aware of that. And then, like you said, we're like tempting them tempting the people over there to overthrow their government. Like that's a great like war tactic to go over there and inflict pain on the people because it works. It then they want to overthrow their government. That's what that's going to do, and then you're stirring up dissension and you're just tempting them to throw off their government, which, like you said, is a violation of Romans 13. And that doesn't seem like you should be tempting them to do that if
And
that's what they're
sometimes they're
supposed to do.
not tempted to do that. Sometimes they actually support their dictator because they understand what the United States is doing to them. They're hurting the people. Our government is trying to overthrow their government, and they sometimes rally behind their tyrannical government because they don't like what the United States is doing to us, and so they don't overthrow the government. They support the government because the government is at war with the United States, and the United States is inflicting pain and misery on us. So that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you've talked before about the difference between, some people might say, "Hey, Kevin, why don't you get involved in like local politics? Why don't you get down at the local level? Why this? I mean, you're running for the U.S. Congress. There's 8 seats, I think, when there's like what 435 total in the country at the U.S. House of Representatives and Congress in Washington. Missouri has 8, and so you're running for the 7th district in Missouri. And so why the national level? How does the national level affect even like maybe local politics at a local level, would you say?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Like, for example, just with regard to local schools, what good does it do? And I don't criticize anybody who wants to run for a school board, but my thinking is the local school boards are governed. Their strings are pulled by the federal government in so many ways. When they receive funding, they receive strings to those funds. And of course, it's the federal government that tells local school teachers you cannot teach children that the Declaration of Independence is true, that we are created. There's a creator, and creator has revealed his laws to us, and we're going to face the supreme judge of the world. You can't teach that all those things are true. You cannot say, a teacher, a public school teacher cannot say, now, class, God says in the Bible, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. You better not do that because that's true. A public school can't say, I mean, that's the foundational level of a functioning society, in my opinion. A functioning level is to say, I can't hurt people because God tells me not to. God tells me to be forgiving. God tells me to love my enemy. That's how we have a civilized society.
Yeah.
And the federal government is against doing the fundamental things that are necessary. So even if you run for a local office, there's so much that you can't do because of what the federal government prohibits you from doing. So yeah, somebody out there, Smith or Jones, can run for a school board, but I'm going to try to see if we can't do something at the federal level to free up public school teachers to teach the truth to children and help foster a better America.
Yeah. Okay. I can see how it really trickles down all the way to local schools. Like that's a big deal. And
It's
there's
not
probably
even a
so many
trickle, it's a
examples.
direct, it's a
Yeah.
direct the local governments are under the thumb of the federal
Um,
government directly. I mean, the federal government is pulling their strings directly. And
yeah.
it has to do with funding, it has to do with regulations, it has to do with Supreme Court opinions, which Congress has the power to limit Supreme Court jurisdiction. So Congress has the power to say to the Supreme Court, if you ever hear a case where the ACLU is trying to take down a copy of the Ten Commandments from a classroom wall
Yeah.
because of this myth of the separation of church and state, we now say the Supreme Court, has no jurisdiction to hear that case. And the Ten Commandments will stay in the classroom. Congress can do that.
Yeah.
Congress could have eliminated abortion restrictions. I mean, could have eliminated Roe versus Wade decades ago.
And you're not
Congress
saying
doesn't
that they have to
exercise that power.
mandate the Ten Commandments. Like some person might hear, are you saying that they need to mandate that they put the Ten Commandments up in schools? And I don't hear you saying that. I hear you saying them they should be allowed the freedom. Right now, they don't even have the freedom to put the Ten Commandments up in a public school or teach the kids that the Declaration of Independence is true. That those things taught in the Declaration of Independence are true. They don't even have the freedom to say those things. And you're saying give the people freedom,
Well,
right?
of course, I go beyond just what's in public schools. I say
Yeah.
give parents the freedom to keep their tax money and send their kids to whatever school they want. Eliminate government compulsory run schools
Yeah.
entirely.
Man, that's so refreshing.
Well,
Can
it's
you?
also pretty radical. And of
Yeah.
course, public school teachers are tend to be short-sighted. And when I say that, they don't think, yeah, that's a good idea because I want to teach the Ten Commandments. I want to teach good things. And if they abolish the public schools, then I can get a job doing that in a private school. They just think that I want to abolish their jobs. It's like Bastiat said, they think that because we don't want the government to run schools, that we don't want schools. They think that because we don't want the government involved in education or energy or all these things, that we don't want education. We don't want energy. Well, that's not the case. We
No.
don't want the government doing those things because the government messes all those things up.
Yeah, they suck at everything they do. Okay, I wanted to ask you about this. Been some No Kings protests like in different cities around the US. Can you can you speak to this whole idea of No Kings? Why are they doing that and what's good and what's bad about what they're saying? Is there
I
anything
don't
good?
I don't know too much about the whole thing
Well, I
actually. I
think
haven't
it's
been
it's just a protest against authoritarianism and fascism,
well,
the
it's
kind of
it's a
like this.
protest against Trump is what I understand it to
Okay,
be.
right. Okay.
And that's the problem. It seems like they're when they say no kings, they don't really mean no kings. They don't really mean no archists. They
Uh-huh.
just mean give us a different team of archists so that they will do our bidding. They will steal from the Trump people instead of the Trump people having the power to steal from us.
Oh my gosh,
But
that's so stupid. Then it's
they're
just a
not against
slogan.
kings. They're not
Yeah,
against archists,
it's
at
just a
least from what
slogan.
I've seen.
Right. That don't just mean you're right. I mean, when you see that, you ought instinctively you automatically know, oh, they're doing that because of Donald Trump. But at the same time, you know that there's still like big government, pro-government people, and they just want someone different in there. And it's like, so what are you actually for exactly? Is that what you're saying? Like,
Yeah, I don't recall if there were any no kings protests during the Biden administration or the
right,
Clinton
right.
administration. It's
Yeah.
only during Republican administrations. I mean,
So,
it's nice. I mean, it's good.
right,
I don't disagree with what they're saying. I just disagree with when they're not going far enough. If you really believe in no kings, it should be
right,
no presidents,
right.
no archists. That should be our theme. No archists.
What might be a constructive conversation to have with someone like that? Like go up and saying, "Okay, you're saying no kings, so then what do you mean by that?" Right? And then kind of press them on if you're saying no kings, then be consistent with that. Let's do that. No kings. Like stop believing in this idea we have to have any presidents, right? I mean,
So I
isn't
would
that
say,
what you're saying?
are you going to be voting for another king, a different king in November in the next election?
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh yeah, we're going to vote for a different king. So it's not really no kings. It's our kings, not their kings.
Our kings, not their kings. Very
Right.
good. Yeah, you're exactly right. Thanks for piercing that one. Man, that's
That
good.
wasn't a hard question, actually. I
I
don't think.
well, dude, probably
No
I'm not as
archists.
smart as
That should
you.
be our theme.
Yeah, no
No
Arcus,
archists.
dude. I wish more people would be able to see that truth. It seems like, political commentator after political commentator can see that like the government does hardly anything good, that it's a disaster, that they're just screwing up all over the place. They're protecting pedophiles. They're stealing from the people. They're doing trillions of dollars of damage in other countries. They're just spreading just all sorts of problems. So why don't they see that? Why don't we just get rid of this thing altogether? Like, why can't the conversation hardly ever get to anarchism, I guess?
Because both sides want their king. Both sides want kings. They both sides want to rule over the other side. Both sides want to force other side to do what they think they should do. Both sides want to steal and give to their favored people. I mean, they both are anarchists. If I say no anarchists, I mean no fascists, no socialists, no communists, no oligarchs, none of these people. And that's a across the board 100% no anarchists at all. And that's they don't want that. They want anarchists. They want their anarchists. They want their king. They just don't want the other side. And of course, the government is composed of the anarchists from both sides. And the government doesn't want us, the people, to abolish their jobs in the government. They want us fighting with each other and just basically moving the players, the blacks and the whites and the reds and the blues on the chessboard. So, but they stay in power. We just argue with each other about which combination of red and blue kings are going to be in office. But they
Yeah,
are always there. And most of them get reelected every election.
right. And we can never unite under one purpose, under one real cause, because with that worldview, if if we continue to believe in Arcus in one form or another, one fashion or another, it's always going to be this versus that, right versus left, blue and red, or whatever colors. I think the only real unity that can be had is the agreement that they're both bad. And then I feel like once we can agree that like that's morally true, then we can start taking steps to weed that out of our lives, out of our country.
The problem is both sides want a king to rule over the other side. Both sides want a king to steal from the other side and give to our side or to our friends, our people. So neither side is willing to say, I won't vote for a king over you. In other words, I'm a Trump person. I won't vote for Trump to be over you. And the other side is not willing to say, I won't vote for Gavin Newsom to be over you. Both sides are going to go to the polls, the election, and they're going to vote for a king to be the king over the bad guys. Neither one is willing to say no kings. They're not willing to say no kings.
Yeah, that message, the no kings message actually is not there. It's not really being
Yeah,
or it's not being applied correctly or understood consistently.
no kings for them, just kings for us. That's their
That's
message, really.
that's their real motto behind their slogan. Well, that's good, Kevin. Thanks. Okay, so you're running for House. The voting, you're already in the primary because you're the only Libertarian candidate, so you're a shoe-in for that. And then the voting for your office, the U.S. 7th District, the House, takes place in November. Is that right?
Right, right.
And so
November.
that'll be, between one Democrat, one Republican, and one Libertarian, as I understand
Right,
it.
right.
So,
But
yeah,
the election in Missouri, that's not that's not really important because I mean, it's a matter of fact that let's say there's 500,000 voters in my district. It's a bigger number, I think, but let's just talk about that number. 500,000 people going to the polls in November. Actually, not that many people will go to the polls. That's just the registered voters. Most registered voters probably won't go to the polls. But of those who go to the polls, a lot of them will. It's a generally Republican district, and a lot of the voters who go to the polls will have never even heard my name. They don't know what libertarian means. They don't even know who their current Republican congressman is. They couldn't name their congressman. They just go to the poll and they vote for the Republican candidate. So what happens on the polls is basically meaningless. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make people ask questions about the whole system that they're supporting and to raise their ideas about, does the Bible have principles that apply to our society and we should be applying those principles?
Yeah.
That's what I'm all about. The election is just a platform. It's a soapbox
Yeah.
for me to be able to get in front of voters they're just no different than any other people, but they are people, get
Right.
in front of them and say, do you know what the Bible says about the problems that we face today? Would you be willing to vote for a candidate who won't even win, just to send a message to the guy who will win, you need to do these things because the Bible says to do these things. You need to stop stealing from people because the Bible says stop stealing. You
Yeah.
need to stop appropriating money to Trump's wars because the Bible says thou shalt not kill.
Right.
You need to be doing these things. And you send that message by voting for an anarcho theocrat, a liberty under God guy, a vine and fig tree guy. You send a message. We don't want this anymore. We want to follow the Bible. Now, how many people have that message they want to send? How many people want to send the message? Even libertarians, unfortunately, a lot of them don't want to send the message that we should be a nation under God.
Yeah. What would you call you? I mean, you're a libertarian, you're running for the Libertarian Party, but what would you call yourself? A Christian anarchist, a Christian theocrat? Is there a good identifier? I mean, it's all just kind of
No,
a
in,
slogan
in
anyway,
terms
but
of marketing, there isn't
yeah,
a good label.
right.
You have to explain everything.
Right. And that's what
Yeah,
you want. We should be wanting to explain. We should be wanting to sit down and have a real conversation and not just throw sound bites and slogans at each other, which is just the same problem we've had, right? This right versus left. I'm not going to listen to you. Just this what do you even call that? Arcist confusion, or just mudslinging, and I don't know. It's got like, can we stop doing that now? I mean, we've been doing that for so long. It's just, you think people would be tired of it and want like a different solution at this point. And I think they do. I think there's genuine people out there who do. Maybe they just don't know that this exists. And that's how I was, Kevin. I mean, I just didn't know there was another option. And I was struggling to find what is the biblical position. And I think you've done better than anyone I've ever seen, like put real meat and bone, like meat on the bones of what the Bible is saying when it comes to politics, and our relationship to government. And I think you've just really knocked it out of the park, man. Romans13.com, Vine and Fig Tree, The Vision, Micah 4. It's really refreshing. So thanks for running, because that takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. Even though you're just using it as a platform, that still takes a lot of courage to get out there and talk to people in the way that you do, and you do a great job of it.
well, I enjoy it, and but I do need campaign contributions, and I'm doing something weird here. I mentioned at the start of this video that I'm wearing two hats because I'm the founder of a 501c3 nonprofit tax exempt organization, which, I mean, nobody's going to cause a problem because none of our money is used in this campaign. We're not endorsing a candidate. We're not doing that. But on the other hand, I am the candidate. So, but I do need campaign contributions because I lost my Walmart job last year and I'm running on fumes. And so for me to go to a candidate forum or to a debate or to a radio interview, I need gas and I need other expenses. And the more money that I have, the more people I can contact, the more people
Right.
I can put these views in front of. So here's the weird way that this could work. And I haven't checked with my attorney on this, so maybe I'm saying something wrong, but I think it could work. And that is, if you make a tax deductible donation to Vine and Fig Tree, a 501c3 nonprofit, then whatever money I earn on my side gigs, I can put that into my campaign instead of putting it into Vine and Fig Tree, because the money that I would spend for domain, for web hosting, and all these things is covered by someone else, so I can put my personal money into my personal campaign. So if you make a donation to Vine and Fig Tree, which is tax deductible, that helps my campaign because it helps me, because it helps my nonprofit business. So campaign contributions or donations to Vine and Fig Tree are greatly appreciated.
All right, there you have it, everybody. If you want to donate to Vine and Fig Tree and also be able to help the campaign that Kevin is running for U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, please donate to Vine and Fig Tree, and we will put the link in the description. And
There's
God
a
bless.
button at
Yeah.
the bottom of the page at vineandfigtree.org.
Okay, will do. All right, Kevin, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you
Thank
later.
you.
All right.
Appreciate your hosting this.